Okay, Lele, of course, a lot happened over the past month since last time we talked. Of course, this is the really humanitarian catastrophe that is happening in Gaza. And before we talk about what's happening there, I mean, you can already see, some books behind me that tell you that, I've been keeping in touch with what's happening in the part of the world from different perspectives, right? Throughout the years and decades. Before we go there, I mean, one of the reasons I think medyo double hunting sa akin itong nangyari, yung discourse around what's happening in Gaza is because, it also kind of reminded me, like how people rationalize yung EJKs, yung panahon ni Digong. I'm not saying it's the same thing. They're very different cases. There was a heinous attack on civilians on October 7. I'm not saying they're the same, but the way that people were desensitizing themselves or rationalizing massive civilian casualties, it kind of reminded me of the what people were saying nung daming namamatay, ay collateral damage lang yan, sorry na lang, ang laban yung alam mo yung ganon. Again, I'm not saying they're the same case. There's very different context, right? Again, we have to condemn any attack on civilians, including what happened on October 7. But I just felt, that kind of came back to me. And I'm hearing a lot of Filipinos say, ay, sorry na. I said like 3,000 children have died. And I said, hey, ganun talaga collateral damage. And then it reminded me of when people were saying, sorry na lang, 10, diba sa atin, even worse, right? Like tens of thousands potentially were victims of EJK, and hundreds of children, at the very least, based on the reports we have seen. By the way, ICC, nag-elo na kay Digong ulit because of domestic bardagulan. But before that, kaya nga, I want to start with Patricia Evangelista's new book, right? Which I think is extremely timely because I was always waiting for someone to write a book like that. And I think there's no one better than, I'm not saying this because she's from also DepSoc and we're from the same organizations and all. No, I'm not saying that because I just feel she's really the right person to write a book like that because of the style of writing and the fact that she was there in your face. She saw the harsh reality in ways none of us saw it. Like, of course, Len, I'm proud ako for, standing up to Digong and all these trolls those years. I think my patience is legendary for fighting back and all. But I never did what Patricia did, which is go on the ground, dun sa nagkaroon ng EJK.
Pero si Pat nakakita ng bangkay gabi-gabi.
I haven't. So, yun yung difference. That's where I give it, like, saludo ako sa kanila. And the way she writes, right? Her style of writing is just so raw and compelling and just it's like almost like it shocks you into conscience, right? In ways that very few other Filipino writers can do it. I mean, no offense to others, we have fantastic, but in that genre, iba talaga si Patricia Evangelista. Now, I'll admit it, I haven't read it, but I've seen many good reviews of the book from David Remnick, I think was one of them. Like really,
David Remnick said it stands next to Homage to Catalonia, and she compared her to George Orwell.
Jesus Christ, like, that's next level. Yeah, I mean, Remnick, I saw and I really look up to. I mean, I've been reading his book. His works throughout the years. So when these gold standard journalists are giving this kind of praises to Patricia Evangelista, it really says that perhaps she's doing justice, covering a huge case of injustice in the Philippines, right? Remember, we talk about moral crisis and all. So can we start there? Like you read,
that's a great place to begin. And if you're in the Bay Area, we're hosting Patricia Evangelista here in Berkeley, and I'm going to interview her for the event. And yung una kong itatanong sa kanya, sana hindi naman pinapakinggan ni Pato, so I don't want her to know the question in advance. Pero I want her to answer the question, paano nagiging manhid ang isang lipunan? We have a term in Tagalog na doesn't translate as well into English, yung kamanhiran or pagiging manhid. Numbness doesn't really capture it because numbness is like you don't feel anything, but manhid is a kind of numbness towards someone else's pain, an incapacity to empathize, right? A lack of empathy, yung pagkamanhid. So paano nagiging manhid yung isang lipunan, and in Judith Butler's terms, how do we start thinking of people like animals, yung notion of animality? If you look at the way people are discussing that Pilipinas, at saka sa Israel din, tinatawag talaga nilang hayop yung mga Muslim, and I can't help but think na parang kung ikaw ay Moro Filipino and you hear all of these Christian Filipinos in Palestine calling Muslims animals or thinking about Muslims as animals, essentially collateral damage, because I really think it's Islamophobia. Kakabahan ka. Kakabahan ka kung Moro ka at this point, tas ganyan yung discourse from Manila. Nakakatakot. Because you know that Manileños, kaya ka rin naman gerahin ng mga Manileños. Alam mo yung ginagawa sa Palestine, yung ginagawa sa Palestine, it's like, you know, in many ways, our Moro brothers and sisters have experienced that. Yung all-out war ni Erap na binobomba sila na wala silang ginawa kundi magbakwit ng bakwit. They have a term, di ba? Yung bakwit sa Mindanao kasi lagi silang binobomba, di ba? If you're a Moro and you see that happening and then you see Filipinos egging it on, my God, that must remind you of yung kamanhiran ng mga Pilipino towards the Moros during the time of, you know, yung all-out war ni Ramos
And
at
they
saka nung
destroyed
all-out war ni
Marawi.
Erap,
I
di
mean,
ba?
honestly, I mean, we had a lot of conversation about the AFP a while ago, but some part of me thinking, did we have to destroy entire Marawi more or less? Yung heart of
Oo
Marawi?
nga eh.
Get
Oo,
rid of
ganyan, di ba?
Mawile fighters? I mean, just a bunch of ragtag terrorists, right? Did you have to bomb the whole city out? You know, like, I don't know. You're right. Yeah.
You know, Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's true, pero walang kasalanan yung mga bata sa Gaza eh. In fact, if you look at the popularity of Hamas, it's down. It's down in Gaza. Why and why is they're not very popular? Because they also terrorize their own communities. Why is Hamas why did Hamas stay the winner in Gaza? It's because the government of Bibi Netanyahu has kept the Palestinian people separated from each other, has kept the Gaza Strip, the people of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip separated from each other, and has prevented them from developing a new and peaceful government authority. What the Bibi Netanyahu government likes is a divided Palestinian people, one Palestinian people that are that under the terrorists, the Hamas, and another part of the Palestinian people in the West Bank reliant on the sclerotic Abu Mazen government. So it's essentially a divide and conquer strategy, and then na divide and conquer sila ng government, tapos pag binomba sila ng gobyerno ng Israel, pag pinapatay sila thousands and thousands, we say, oh, kasalanan nila. I mean, it's just, I mean, bakit ganyan?
And the argument is that, oh, why don't they just go away? And I was like, the only neighbor they have aside from, you know, Gaza, right? Gaza is separated from West Bank. West Bank is Jordan is on the other side. Like some people who make comments, they don't even know the basic geography, right? First of all, West Bank and Gaza are separated, right?
Yes.
One is on one side. The other one is, Gaza is connected to via Rafah border to Egypt, and then it's like Sinai Desert, right? And the idea is like, oh, you go and become refugees in Sinai Desert, and don't worry, maybe you'll come back, maybe you'll not come back. I mean, and like 2 million people in such a limited space. There's just so much we can do. I mean, again, I understand that, you know, the, you know, urban warfare, you know, you can talk about tactical, operational issues, etc. But for me, kasi the shocking thing is how desensitized people are to, I mean, ako, Leloy, I mean, while I was going all around the world, I mean, always at the back of my head were these images I've been seeing, like, you know, children, you know, torn to pieces. I mean, and then at some point, my mind could not process it anymore. Like as a human being, Leloy, I cannot process the death of so many children. I mean, we were already shocked with how many Filipinos were killed, with how many Thais were killed, how many foreigners were killed, how many innocent children were killed on October 7. And then comes this response, and then comes like I just some point I don't know how to process it, to be honest, bro. As a human,
hindi ko talaga naiintindihan, and I think there's in Filipino there's a constellation of biases involved here. There's the Islamophobia. I mean, it's real. You see it in the way we treat Mindanao. So obviously, kung ang pagtingin natin sa Mindanao mas mababa sa atin, kung ang pagtingin natin sa Moro mas mababa sa atin, it's so easily transposable to Palestine because they are essentially parang colonized and weak Muslim peoples as well. So the logic translates. The other thing is yung parang Christian Zionism natin, this belief that Israel is the land of the Jews. We don't even know that Israel is most Filipinos don't know that Israel is a modern nation state, the way the Philippines is a modern nation state. It is not the same as the land of the Israelites, and we should not even, and many Filipinos even call them the Israelites. No, they're not the Israelites. They're not that ancient people. They're the Israelis, citizens of the modern Israeli state. The idea that Israel should look, and yung idea ng Pilipino, because it is the land of the Jews from 2,000 years ago, what kind of stupid argument is that? That a country should look the same way it did 2,000 years ago? I mean, it's really absurd. Like, so under that argument, you should believe that the United States today should just be completely occupied by Native Americans, right? You should believe that that people in the Philippines should not be Christian. They should all be animists, right? Because you believe that what was the case 2,000 years ago should be the case today. It makes absolutely no sense. Tapos meron pa akong isa nakitang meme na nakakainis. Yung ano daw, parang there was never a state of Palestine. So how come we're insisting that there should be a state of Palestine? Because prior to Israel, there was the British territory, the British colony or the British protectorate. Prior to that, there was the Ottoman Empire. There was never a Palestinian state. So why are we calling for a Palestinian state? Now, that's precisely the point na never nabigyan ng pagkakataon yung mga Palestinians to create a state. And that's precisely the injustice that there was never a Palestinian state. I mean, it just boggles the mind, the kind of absurdity na
of course, I mean, to be fair, I think we have had continuous presence of Jewish folks in parts, including Jerusalem, right? Throughout the centuries, Crusaders era. So it even goes well beyond their being exiled during the Roman era. At the same time, I'm just saying, like, people are forgetting that there was the Sassanid, the Byzantine, the Ottoman Muslim Empire in charge of that area of the world. And during the time, there were all sorts of people there.
I mean, yung area
Arabs,
naman na
Christians, Muslims. And ito pa, Leloy, many Filipinos do not know. Palestinians, a lot of them are actually Christians. Like,
yes.
Nazareth, last time I checked, I think it's in West Bank. Like, it's like,
yes. A lot of
just because they're Arab doesn't mean they're not Christian. You know, like those basic things, people don't even understand those things, right?
A lot of them are Christians. Yes,
a lot of them are Christians.
That's why that's why various Christian churches have been talking about the ceasefire in Gaza, including the Roman Catholic Church, including Pope Francis himself, who's been calling for a ceasefire. Dahil ang daming namamatay na Kristiyano dun sa process. But you know, we don't even need to get there. Like, who cares if some of them are Christians? The point is, these are people, and they don't deserve to be treated that way. Parang,
I'm just saying in terms of like building bridges of emotional empathy and affinity, right? Like parang, yun nga, kasi nga sabi mo, there's an Islamophobia aspect. And I think, but the problem is that even the Islamophobia is based on the fact it's targeted against people who are not even Muslims in this case. Not Islamophobia is wrong in itself, and then there's like double wrong there. Do you get what I'm saying? And then the other thing is, of course, yun nga, like, and then we also forget the horrible history of colonialism. I mean, the Jewish people have all the right to live in peace. That's why I'm against anti-Semitism, etc. I'm also against Islamophobia. We're also forgetting the horrible legacy of Western empires, right? Who carved out Ottoman Empire, tossed it between them, and then the whole partition mess that happened after they withdraw from the region. Just like how Pakistan and India were engaged in pogrom, horrible wars, the same thing happened. Kaya yung mga Pinoy nagsabi, sana kinonquer na lang tayo nung isa pang colonial power, hindi Spain. Like, you're just looking at Singapore and you're thinking, just because the former colonizer of Singapore was country X, then therefore, like, you're forgetting what happened in South Asia. You're forgetting what happened in the Middle East. So for me, because I sympathize with you know, all persecuted people throughout history, right? The Jews have been persecuted people. At the same time, I sympathize with other people who are facing this horrible situation right now. Well,
I heard somebody say na I heard a Jewish I think he's the editor of Jewish Currents, and he one of the editors at large of the Jewish
Currents. Is it Peter Baynard? Is it Peter Baynard?
Yes, Peter Baynard.
He's fantastic. He's the best.
Peter Baynard said something really interesting. I can't think of anything less Jewish than creating refugees. Right? Jewish people know, and he was saying, like, we Jewish people know the pain of being refugees. That's why to create refugees goes against the principles of his people. And I thought that was a great statement. And you know, the Israeli state is creating refugees, right? And let me just say that, of course, like, I'm not a Jewish person, but there are many Jews who don't identify with Israel, who don't believe in what Israel is doing, right? And we can't just say that, you know, Israel is the voice of the Jewish people, because if we say that parang Israel is the voice of the Jewish people and we criticize Israel, then it becomes easy to call us anti-Semitic. So I think there is really there's a clear distinction that needs to be made between a critique of Israel, which is a state, a government, and a
Different
critique of the
policy.
Jewish
Yeah.
people, yeah, which is a people or a group of believers or a religion, right? One is the critique of something of a modern institution. The other one is a critique is an ethnocentric racist critique, right? And there's a huge difference between the two things.
I would also want to add that I put a lot of blame also on Arab countries in the region, no, who have weaponized and leveraged the suffering of the Palestinian people for their own political causes, right?
Hmm.
So for a long time, when Egypt, Nasser and those people, whenever they face problem, they'll use the Palestinian. Kaya nga, a lot of wars happened, right? Because the Palestinian cause became a rallying point for dictators in Arab countries to
Yes.
actually overlook their own domestic failures and problems and all.
Oh, and then at the same time, yung
Tatalo sila.
hypocrisy naman nila was to not let the Palestinian refugees in, di ba?
And,
Oh.
and that's another thing. Like,
Oh.
I mean, in fairness, naman, tiny Lebanon has so many refugees from Palestine. Tiny Jordan, I think half of their population are already refugees from Palestine or descendants of that. But like all those rich Gulf countries, right, want to present like they're so rich, and yet what are they doing for the Palestinian people, right?
Pare, that doesn't just apply to the Gulf countries. Malaysia, kita mo magputak ito sa Anwar Ibrahim Palestinian Solidarity. Ilang refugee ang
Ano pa sila,
pinapapasok mo?
Kafia and all of that. I was in
Oh.
Malaysia, bro. I mean, it was
O, di
intense.
ba? Ilang
Yeah.
refugee pinapapasok mo? Putak ka ng putak about Palestinian
Rohingya.
Solidarity.
Oh,
So,
even the
may mga
Rohingya.
refugee.
Forget about Middle East. Yung mga Muslim from Myanmar, ilang bang pinapasok ng Malaysia? Remember yung Rohingya who were escaping genocide
Yes.
from
Oh.
crazy guys in Myanmar, the junta? Pinapasok pa sila ng Malaysia, Indonesia right away. So you're right. You're right na unfortunately what happens is sometimes this cause is being leveraged by authoritarian leaders or questionable leaders in countries. I'm not saying that's the case with Anwar Ibrahim per se. I'm just saying in the Middle East we saw many countries and like what are you really doing for the Palestinian people? And a lot of them were actually just trying to forget about the issue and directly deal with the government in Tel Aviv, right? So yeah, it's really complicated issue. But the reason why I started with Patricia Evangelista is because in how I see discourse about Gaza, I see a mirror of also, I mean, about things that I also found morally really difficult and tragic when it comes to loss of life in the Philippines throughout our own kind of crisis. I mean, how do you come to terms? Again, I mean, we're hoping that Patricia doesn't see this until after your exchange with him. But I think you're the first person I interviewed and talked to that used the word moral crisis. Have you had a moral crisis in the Philippines? I mean, no. I mean, the fact that I don't see a big constituency for ICC investigation already tells you like what's going on, right? I mean, kasi wala na mga Duterte, diba? They're no longer in power, and yet I don't see a lot of Filipino people excited about a proper investigation into what really went wrong during the drug war. It seems that the mood is just forget about it and move on. So that's the thing. We are a people without history, right? We never, especially when, I mean, it's tragedies that brings people together and shapes their nationhood. I mean, that's very Benedict Anderson way of putting it, but it's true, right? Palestinians are shaped by their tragedy. Jewish people are shaped by the tragedy of what happened to them throughout centuries in Europe. Today's Germany is shaped by the tragedy of what it did to others, especially the Jewish people, among others. So, and in the Philippines, we don't want to just talk about it, no? I mean, like, wala, tapos na yung EJK, nagawa na, anong gagawin natin? I don't know, like, for me, it's a double moral crisis because it's a failure to resist when things are going wrong, but it's also a failure to come to terms with it and to deal with it in a just manner. I mean, we don't even have a South Africa version of it. Justice and reconciliation kind of things that Mandela did, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm just wondering, this is a very big question, right? This is a very big question. I don't know if you probably will raise it also with Patricia, but this is what I'm almost philosophical, just like Peter Baynard. When I discuss the geopolitical issues, I responded. I mean, approached them also in very spiritual way. I mean, we're already in Sabbath day. I mean, there's a reason why I also, observe Sabbath, because I believe in all Abrahamic religions. All of the Abrahamic, I mean, if you go to Judaism, Islam, Christian, all of them say a single life is you save a single life is like you've saved the humanity because every human life has a spark of divine. So like I approach it that way. ikaw,
Parang yung galit nila yung galit ng mga ibang Pilipino sa Muslim, parang kinakalimutan natin na naniniwala rin yung mga kapatid natin kay Jesucristo, for example, di ba? They believe he's a great prophet.
and
You know,
Mary,
they
and Mother
believe
Mary, and
they
Mother
believe
Mary
in
is
Mother
great.
Mary. You know,
Yeah.
they believe in the resurrection. I mean, Jesus, you know, there's really more. At the end of the day, there's more that unites Christian peoples and Muslims than divides them. And yet and that there's just a focus on a kind of us versus them that is so frustrating. And tama ka meron talagang Duterte element dito Talaga Duterte is poison I mean, he really poisoned our discourse
I mean,
by
what did
really.
Duterte say, right? Remember the horrible things he said about the situation in Gaza right now? Diba he said something? He advised Netanyahu about something. I mean, God, I mean, it's just, who would say things like that? I mean, like, so actually, I'm
Kasi
worried because
animal naman talaga sa animal. You know, it's a kind of animality. That's how they think about it. And
bestiality.
yung ano dito is like a lot of people who say that they are pro-Israel say they're pro-Israel because they're Christian, which is so sad because now Catholicism is actually, and I think global Catholicism is going into a period of it's a great period of great empathy for the Catholic Church under Francis.
Yes,
And
I love this
Francis,
guy. Amazing.
nananawagan po ang Santo Papa ng ceasefire. Nananawagan po
Kinita
ang
na
Santo
kayo kay
Papa na
Santo
itigil
Papa.
na ang patayan. Pero very typical Filipino, Catholic when it suits your biases. I'm Catholic because it suits my anti-Islamic biases. But I'm not Catholic when the Pope says stop the killing. Di ba parang...
Or says good things about Islam. Remember, Pope Francis has
Oh.
a very good interfaith relationship with Muslim countries. He has prayed in the mosque in Istanbul. He has been to Qatar, if I'm not mistaken, where many Filipinos, our kababayans, actually were able to have also mass there. Yeah, it's kaya nga sabi ko, at least listen to the Pope, right? As in listen to the Pope. He comes from Argentina. He saw horrible things in his own country. The whole desaparecidos phenomenon, military regime. This guy is not just some guy who was just out. No, he saw reality. He saw the thick texture of history during the Cold War period. He knows, he comes from the developing world like us, right? He understands the tragedy that people, I mean, he's of course Italian by descent, but in a way, you can also consider him as the first colored Pope in a sense because he comes from the post-colonial world in a way. I mean, so
yung idea of Lolo Kiko I mean, I'm not even a Catholic, but I mean, it's so touching that the Filipinos refer to him as Lolo Kiko because he's supposed to be really
I
one
didn't
of
know
us.
that. Huh?
Yung ganong klaseng tenderness, but we where's the tenderness when it comes to, you know, drug addicts or suspected drug addicts or Muslims, ganyan. It's just, I don't know.
Yun nga,
Can we be more tender? I mean, we are very sentimental people, you know, we love song. Mahilig tayo. Sabi nga ni Eli Bendia, mga taong mahilig sa love song at drama, di ba? Yan ang Pilipino. Pero where's that tenderness when what's
yeah, and then
becoming?
unfortunately we also like this kind of horrible dramas, right? But I want to end on this note. Ronald Llamas had his own take on this, but for me, I appreciated that Sara Duterte, who has a Jewish heritage via her mom, called for pigil, for ceasefire weeks ago, even way before, and you know where I'm gonna end here now, way before other people. And in fact, some people are saying, like what is the stance, for instance, of people like Maria Ressa, who is a Nobel Peace Prize winner? No, I mean, I think some of the attacks on her have been unfair. I think a lot of people are jumping to conclusions right away based on what people tweet. I went through Maria Ressa's tweets. She actually also retweeted many things that were shading on humanity, shared humanity of people. So I think there has been a lot of unfair attack on her. But of course, you could also expect her to come up with like a clear statement, because I remember Obama 2 weeks ago or a week had a long piece on the Medium where Obama is smart, right? He's doing what Jordan Peterson should have done, which is you don't go when there's something very horrible happening. You don't go with one liner. I think Jordan Peterson already admits that he went wrong. What Obama did, of course, two very different people, was he just posted a link. He posted just a link to a long statement because this is an issue where it has many dimensions, and you cannot just put in one sentence or one paragraph on Twitter and all. Maybe it would be good, siguro, for Maria Ressa to also come up with something.
Yeah, maybe.
Like that, just to set the record clear, because I think she's being attacked by a lot of people, and some of it's very unfair. But I
Yeah.
also see where some people are coming from, which is like, you're the new Nobel Peace Prize winner, man. You know, you are when you win the Nobel Peace Prize, you're a global figure already. You're not just for the Philippines or for media. You're the bearer of humanity's conscience. And she won that award in a country called Norway, which, by the way, voted for ceasefire. And when I was in Scandinavia over the past few weeks,
Nice.
when I was in Stockholm, when I was in Copenhagen,
Nice.
would see Palestinian flags here and there, solidarity with Palestinians and their people, especially not with Hamas, not with what happened on October 7. We're talking Palestinian people. By the way, there's no Hamas in West Bank, just to be clear, right?
No, there's a sclerotic,
There.
Palestinian Authority, but that's another issue. Neither here
But
nor
that's
there.
another issue, right? So I don't know. Like, so first, what do you feel about the Sara Duterte saying something like that? Because I think that was politically edgy. And she ended up saying shalom, right? Like peace.
Well, actually, alam mo naman, well, the thing with the Dutertes is that they can be many things, right? They're also Mindanaoan. I mean, I think that's very clear. They're Mindanaoan and they know Moros, right? So I think that's part of it, because the Moro Parliament has passed really strong anti-Israel language also.
Right? I didn't see that. Thank you for pointing
meron
that out.
Meron sila. I think they passed really strong anti-Israel language. So obviously they see the struggle of the Palestinians as analogous to their struggle, and they're absolutely right, diba? And I think, you know, to be fair to Sarah, she probably understands that sentiment better than a Manileño does. And I would have hoped that her father would as well, right? I mean, her father always claimed to be the great defender of the Moro people. But of course, napaka-analogous nung nangyayari sa Gaza and yung mga nangyari sa Mindanao. And I just hope, I don't know, like, obviously, Rodrigo Duterte has sympathies for the Moro people, but his greater sympathy is for death, right? He loves death.
And fellow right-wing populists. And fellow right-wing populists, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Maria Ressa, like, do you think she should do the same thing like Obama? Maybe just make
I think so. I mean, I completely agree with you na parang Maria is being looked at now as a global leader, kind of global conscience. And I also agree with you na maraming galit kay Maria, maraming inggitero, obviously, kaya they'll find any reason para i-cancel siya, di ba? Lalo na mga people na, a lot of these people who want to cancel her are actually people who wanted to cancel us at various points also. So, you know, I understand the trolling. And marami naman, may mga sinabi naman si Maria na okay naman, na binublow up lang. There's one tweet where I would absolutely disagree with Maria, where she's saying na delikado yung statement of from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea.
Anti-Semitic.
Yeah, they're saying it's like the discourse of Israel, of Zionists, is that from the river to the sea is Palestine will be free is genocidal, because effectively sinasabi, because from the river, meaning the river Jordan until the sea, the Mediterranean, Palestine will be free. Ang interpretation ng mga Zionists na galit dun sa chant na yun is gusto daw burahin yung state of Israel. I'm sure there are some people who shout that, who believe that, but I think for the majority of people who shout from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they just mean to say that everybody in that territory from the river to the sea who is Palestinian should be able to thrive and should be able to live a life that is dignified, right? And they don't have that right now, because Israel is an apartheid state. If you are Palestinian, if you are Muslim, even if you carry Israeli citizenship, you have fewer rights. So for example, even if you carry Israeli citizenship and you're Palestinian, you have deprioritized ka in terms of getting land.
I mean, 20% of the population of Israel is of Arab.
Yeah. And also, for example, like, it's, if you are, I don't know kung napasa to, but some people are passing law, or want to pass a law, for example, which would bar a Palestinian married to an Israeli from getting citizenship. Whereas, if you are Jewish, even if you come from another country, you get citizenship immediately. So meron talagang outright legal discrimination talaga. And then of course, like, if you live in the West Bank, if you live in the Gaza Strip, your life is effectively controlled by Israel, but you can't vote, right? So that's not a democracy, right? So that's not freedom. So when we say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, we're just saying we want democratic rights for all Palestinian people who are living from the river to the sea. We're not calling for the deletion of the state of Israel. I
Yeah,
believe that the state of Israel is a reality, right? Many states in the world have origins that are violent, right? The United States has a violent origin. Like its origin is that it displaced a lot of Native Americans, right? And yet nobody's calling for the erasure of the United
this
States.
place is quite a mild way of putting it. Yeah.
It's become a historical reality. I think that Israel has violent roots. That doesn't mean I want it destroyed. It's a historical reality, and there are people there. There are people who have human dignity, Jewish and Palestinian, who are living in that state. And I don't believe
And
that that state should
Filipinos,
be
many Filipinos,
wiped off the state of the
Asians.
map.
Yeah, so I think that's why I'm saying this is why I really like the intervention by the German government. So I shared it actually on my Instagram. You can see parts of the speech given by the Vice Chancellor of Germany. It was this classic Hegel is behind me, no? Neither nor, right? No to anti-Semitism, also no to Islamophobia, right? Yes to appreciating certain geopolitical realities, but also yes to observing international law and human rights of all people, regardless of color, creed. It was German precision technology. It was like, what I'm saying, like just the way the words came in, everything was said in that 10-minute intervention. I only posted a part of it where I felt was lacking in the statement of other Western officials. And it really means something when it comes from Germany, right? Because post-war Germany's entire identity is based on their historical guilt and atonement for the horrible thing to the Jewish people. And at the same time, that didn't stop them to also emphasize the rights and human rights and dignity of the Palestinian people. And kaya nga gusto ko yung sinabi ni Boric, di ba? Yung ka-age natin yan, di ba? Yung president ng Chile. Oh, he's like 36. He's actually my age.
Bata pa sa
Boric is very young. Yeah. And he said something like, we should condemn terror acts against civilians, and at the same time, we should also make sure that states abide by their obligations when it comes to protection of civilians. It's not an either-or issue, right? It's not an either-or issue. Just last point, bro. You're there in the United States. Clearly, this crisis could decide next year's elections, because many are saying that Muslim Americans, a lot of them in swing states, are most likely going to sit this out. They're anticipating a Trump already going to challenge it. Obviously, they're not going to vote for Trump, but they cannot bring themselves to vote also for Biden. So I see suddenly a change in tone. A lot of Democrats are now coming out. Some are calling for ceasefire. Some are saying they should stop. You see Blinken, who of course, has the, of course, Jewish heritage, and he, of course, he's the issue of fighting anti-Semitism is also very important to him. He is also coming in and saying that it's important to consider some sort of humanitarian ceasefire. So we saw a political report on there. I mean, as someone based in the U.S., as an academic based in the U.S., I mean, of course, you're in the Berkeley area and it's very lefty and all of that. But what is your understanding of this? I mean, are you worried that this will just make a Trump presidency more inevitable, the way the Biden administration has handled this? Are you genuinely worried? Because many people I'm talking, including some of the Americans I was talking to in Greenland just the other day, they were saying it looks like it's becoming very long shot now for Biden, because these elections will be
I mean,
will be county elections, right? Yeah.
Meron talagang affect no? Kahit ako na sobrang takot kay Trump, nawawalan ako ng amor kay Biden dahil sa ginagawa niya, di ba? I mean, Biden can't even say the word ceasefire. He says pause. No man, ceasefire. Use the word that the Pope is using, ceasefire. Tama na ang patayan, di ba? And this is something that people, I don't know why the idea of stop the killing is so controversial here, in the same way that the idea of stop the killing was so controversial in the Philippines. Stop the killing should not be controversial for anybody, as you say, who has any iota of love for the Abrahamic traditions, which are all united by a belief in the common dignity of human people and the commandment, thou shalt not kill. Right. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. I hope Trump doesn't win. And then, of course, the other thing is like, from a pwede ba akong baguhin ko lang yung angle ko ng konti dito?
Please go ahead.
I want to make a Filipino nationalist argument against the support of Israel. The more money the United States pours into the Middle East, and the more military attention it gives to the Middle East, the less money and the less military attention it will have to protect us from China. That's kind of like I mean, this is not a humanitarian argument. This is pure
It's a
realpolitik, Filipino
geopolitical
nationalist
argument.
argument. Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you think of that?
which I've been writing on quite consistently for the past week or so. I mean, again, like US should help, troubled friends and allies. I mean, like look at Ukraine, for instance, right? The situation they're facing with Russia, etc. But the reality is, like there's just so much money that the US can, there's so much
Yeah.
help, so much bandwidth.
And,
The US is not, yeah.
itong mga Israelis na to, gagamitin niyang pera to massacre people, to commit genocidal acts. I mean, we can debate whether or not this is genocide or not, but there's a genocide. It is clear that certain Israelis have genocidal intent. Kung bigay mo na lang yung pera na yan, and we talked about the AFP, bigay mo lang kaya yung pera na yan sa AFP para labanan yung Chinese. Hindi naman genocidal ang intent ng AFP. Ang intent ng AFP is to protect is to protect our land and to protect our fishermen, right? I mean, it's just like, I don't know. This
We're
is kind of
confronting the most powerful, or not most, but the biggest navy in the world.
Sa amin na lang.
For country, yeah. I mean,
Biden, amin na lang yan.
Next level, yeah.
Yung pulis namin yung mamamatay tao, hindi yung military namin. Bibigay mo na sa amin yan. Amin na lang yan. Wag na sa Israelis.
I'm glad you ended on a realpolitik point because it kind of, puts everything together. Yeah, I mean, just look at the numbers, no? Last year, of course, Biden's asking for $40 million aside from annual $3 billion between 1946 to last year. I think Israel got more than $300 billion in all sorts of aid, defense aid, and related aid. But for me, it's not even just no. Philippines from 2015 until today, it's barely above $1 billion. That's 3 years. It starts it's 3 years after Scarborough Shoal, and still it's barely above $1 billion. But for me, it's not even that. I mean, like compared to Egypt, which gets $1 billion a year, compared to Jordan, which got $1.4 billion or so, in mid-2000s. I mean, we're not even getting at the level of Egypt and Jordan or Pakistan, right? Forget about Ukraine or all those countries. So we're already deprioritized, and you were wondering that siguro this is a time to make the most out of our alliances. I'm not going to use the word juice it, but because karap mo China, this is second most powerful country on earth in terms of military. I think Russia was always overrated. They have great culture and literature, but their military was always overrated.
My God, you give so much money to a people na gustong durugin ang Gaza. Let's Gaza is as big as I think like a random, like Gaza is very small, by the way. Gaza is you can run a marathon through Gaza. It's very small. And they're packed like sardines. Like para yung urban concentration yan parang Quiapo, gano'ng karaming tao sa Gaza. You mean to tell me that to contain the terrorists, because there are terrorists naman talaga in Gaza, Hamas, that to contain that you need that much military firepower, and yet yung Philippines, which is not confronting terrorists, it's confronting the second largest military in the world, you would deprioritize us compared to that? I mean, it's absurd on so many levels. I mean, so ano na tayo, as if may nakikinig sa ating State Department, di ba? Pero, I mean, as a Filipino, what I'm trying to do is actually convince the Filipinos that, okay, let's say manhid ka talaga na tao. Wala kang pakialam sa buhay ng Muslim. Okay, fine. Why should you care about Israel? You should care Israel-Palestine because the more money the US sends there, maybe it's less for us. I hate to make the argument on that level because the argument should be humanitarian. Pero sige, kung manhid ka talaga, here's the argument for you.
And the other lesson, Brad, I'll end on this note, is we have how many million Filipinos in US? Maybe they should build a strong lobby too. Because the US is not going to give you a lot of money if there's no pressure on them to do that, right? There's no lobbying group. So how I wish that the strong 5 million, 4 million strong Filipino-American community, hypo mga tito, a lot of them with background in the military, etc., they'll be more organized and push for more aid and assistance to the Philippines. I mean, the good thing I heard, Lelo, is marami mga Filipino-Americans, second generation and all, who are openly saying they're volunteering to be more stationed in the Philippines under EDCA, and they're volunteering to be here if ever it goes down to the wire, right? I met,
may mga nakausap down. Hindi man second generation to, mga first generation to.
Right, they're ready to go. I mean, if Guerra sa China, they'll fight it not necessarily in the Filipino flag, they'll fight it under the American flag, but they'll fight it as a Filipino. I met
with Filipino American flag, but with Filipino hearts.
Exactly. and you know, Filipino looks and all. And yeah, ayoko na magpuso-puso kasi hindi, in fairness, na gold medal ng Gilas, kaso yung kay Brownlee medyo nasira yung ano natin. But thank you very much, Lelo. I really appreciate it. Syempre, almost 1 month tayo hindi nag-usap. And one of the things I really appreciate when I talk to you is, you know, it brings out a lot of ideas that are there, and at the same time, it also sheds light on. I mean, you know, it's hard wrestling. I mean, you could see, like, I get a bit emotional, you know, about some of these issues. Like, usually I'm a fast-paced guy. I'll go at any issue, right? When it comes to some of these issues, I'm really watching everything I say, because I want to make sure I'm rightfully sensitive to the feelings and the sensibilities of a lot of people that I believe they deserve that, right? At the same time, of course, we're also trying our best to impart humanity and compassion. And I think you cannot do that by just guilt-tripping people or saying they're horrible people. You have to do that by just inspiring conscience and compassion. Yun lang, all right? So thank you very much, Lelo. I know you're not a religious person, but I can see that there's a degree of spirituality to you. Maybe
Yes.
in a you know, in a non-theist way, if I can put it that way. So I appreciate it. I find a kindred spirit there. So maraming salamat, Lelo. I really appreciate talking to you. And then you're a unique guy. Your take on things is very different.
You too.
Yeah.
It's just nice to be able to hash out these ideas and then develop them. Miss kita, pare. Lalo na ngayon, kailangan natin pag-usapan to dahil masakit sa puso eh. The other reason why I do this is, of course, why we do this is, of course, you know, there's a therapeutic value to talking to someone who shares your principles, shares your beliefs, and shares a kind of, and whose heart bleeds in a way that's similar to yours. I think your heart bleeds in a way that's very similar to mine. And you know, our hearts are really now bleeding for the victims of the drug war, bleeding for Palestinian victims, bleeding for victims of Hamas, bleeding for all
people. It's not picking sides here. No. Naman tayong kababayan natin. We cannot say, you know, we cannot overlook that. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. We can fight for human dignity and self-determination of persecuted people or oppressed people. But at the same time, we have to call out when civilians are attacked. That's wrong under any condition. 100%. Salamat, Lelo. Have a blessed Sabbath day. Mine has already started. You still have your Saturday to enjoy. Enjoy your Saturday and have a spiritual one. I think I need to have some. I mean, I have so many beautiful pictures and all I want to share, but I just felt it's not the right time. Kaya practically, if you look at my Instagram, it's all about the conflict happening right now, because parang that's the least I can do, bro. That's just the least I can do, and I'll continue to do this because this is the best I can do, even if it's just a tiny contribution. Yun lang. Maraming salamat, bro. God bless. And please send my regards to Patricia and good luck with your talk. And
yes, thank you.
Once uploading video, please forward and I look forward to reading it.
Yeah, it's going to come out on the main Berkeley podcast, actually. Main
Berkeley podcast. Thank you so much, bro. Please forward it so that I can share it also, and so more people can listen. I'm sure many people want to listen. Ito na yung mga rivalries, UP versus Ateneo now coming together again. God bless. Talk to you.
Yeah.